Oh, yes. Are you ready?
Not yet.
Just hold your hand up when you're ready. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with our budget meeting. Welcome, everybody. We'll start off with roll call, please. Julie?
Mayor Mueller,
Yes, here.
Councillor Coleman. Here. Councillor Gerson,
Present?
Councillor Goebel,
Here.
Councillor Gorley,
Here.
Councillor Nash,
Here.
Councillor Trask,
Here.
Robert Brianna,
Here.
Derek Dix,
Here.
Kenneth Hamlin,
Here.
Dave Journey,
Here.
David Lohman,
Here.
Garrett Schaefer,
Here.
Lisa Wilson.
Here.
Let the record show we have all present. So at this point, I will turn it over to our city manager to get the ball rolling here.
Mr. Mayor, first item on the agenda would be the election of a chair. What I would encourage or ask you to do as mayor is to open the floor for nominations, and then we would hold a vote for the chair, and then we would allow the chair to continue the meeting from that point.
Okay. At this time, I'll open up the floor for nominations of chair. Who would like to sit in the hot seat? Want,
I'll do it. That sounds pretty quiet.
what's that, Ken?
That sounds pretty quiet.
So is that a voice for yourself there, Ken?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay. Mr. Loman, you said you'd like to, so we have,
Can do it, he's better looking than me.
what's that?
And he delivers presents in December.
All right, we have a nomination of Kenneth Hamlin. Anybody else would like to throw their name in the hat?
Then he has to be here.
So Kenneth, you're going to be able to make all the meetings? Want to make
Yeah.
sure you, what's that?
I should be able to do that.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and open up for a vote. So you want to do it by roll call?
Yeah, since it's on video, probably best to do all
Okay.
of this.
So Julie, we'll go ahead and do a roll call for Kenneth being the chair.
Mayor Mueller,
Yes.
Councillor Gerson,
Yes.
Councillor Trask,
Yes.
Councillor Goebel,
Yep.
Councillor Nash,
Yeah.
Councillor Gorley,
Yes.
Councillor Coleman. Yes. Robert Brianna,
Yes.
Derek Dix,
Yes.
Dave Journey,
Yes.
David Lohman,
Yes.
Garrett Schaefer,
Yes.
Kenneth Hamlin,
Yes.
Lisa Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, let the record show all in favor for Kenneth Hamlin to be the chair. Do you want him to take over the meeting or do you want me to just guide through this?
Since we have a chair, it's probably best for him to let him go ahead and take it.
Okay, Ken, you're now the chair. You've been nominated for that. At this point, I'll let you take over the meeting. So you'll need to open it up for now for the election of vice chair and move forward.
Okay, we're gonna open up the voting for vice chair. Anyone interested? Here we go.
Mr. Lohman has voiced that he'd be interested.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll take a vote. Greg Mayer,
Yes.
I can do that part for him.
Hey, Ken, if you want Julie to go ahead and do the roll call for you.
okay, that'll be fine.
Go ahead, Julie, go ahead and do the roll call.
Mayor Mueller,
Yes.
Councillor Gerson,
Yes.
Councillor Trask,
Yes.
Councillor Goebel,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yeah.
Councillor Gorley,
Yes.
Councillor Coleman. Yes. Robert Brianna,
Yes.
Derek Dix,
Yes.
Dave Journey,
Yes.
David Bowman,
Yes.
Garrett Schaefer,
Yes.
Kenneth Hamlin,
Yes.
and Lisa Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair, and I can't find my agenda. What's next on the agenda?
Budget training.
Okay. What do we usually do for budget training?
I think that's where I take over for a second.
Okay,
Thank you first off for everybody who has agreed to be on this committee. We're really excited that it is a full committee this year. This is my third year on the Sweet Home Budget Committee as a staff member. And this is the first year that it's been full, so we're really excited about that. I am sharing on the screen our presentation for this moment. Let me send it to everybody else who's watching. And then we'll get started. So I'm just going to briefly and semi-quickly run through kind of what our goal here is over the next, over tonight and the next 3 meetings after that. The budget document that you have before you is everything that the city is proposing to happen in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Our fiscal years begin July 1st of the kind of even number, or it will begin July 1st and end June 30th of the number for the fiscal year. So in this case, June 30, 2021 is the end of the fiscal year for the budget that's sitting before you. First off, what is a budget? So a budget is a communications tool. It gives the city and then subsequently the budget committee and the city council a chance to convey a message. What is it that the city wants to accomplish over the next fiscal year, over the next 12 months? What is it that we really want to make sure that we're focusing on? What are we hearing from constituents as far as what we need to do to make this city great? So that's kind of the general purpose of the document that's before you. The budget's a vehicle for obtaining public opinions. This is a chance through this committee and through the public live stream and a call-in service that folks can provide public comment and feedback on this budget, because truly this budget and city spending is dollars generated by the residents and the businesses of this city. So it's vital that the public feels like they have a chance to provide public comment and feedback on what we're proposing for them. It also provides the city with a tool to promote financial accountability. So anybody can look at this document, read through its pages, and know exactly what every dollar that we are spending, what it's going towards, what our overall plan is, and knowing that we're not squandering that money inappropriately or taking in a bunch of money to sit on, because that's taxpayer dollars. They are wanting to know that their dollars are being spent in the best way possible. So the purposes of the budgeting process. Our goal is to fund programs that are responsive to constituent wishes, which in this case is the residents of the city of Sweet Home as well as the businesses. It's effective in accomplishing constituent goals, and it's cost efficient. And the budget that you have before you, we believe that it demonstrates kind of an ability for the city to continue the work that it has done. And City Manager Towery will go through kind of some more details when he gives his budget message to you after this. So I'll save all that wonderful detail to him. Some objectives, we need to establish the budgeting procedures, which we'll kind of go through here in another slide in a few minutes. This is stuff that the city works on before it gets to your point. We estimate revenues, expenditures, and proposed taxes. All of that is contained in the book before you. And we'll kind of cover over the next few meetings what those revenue and expense forecasts are based on. Describe programs and the fiscal policy to accomplish those programs. And then again, obtain input from the public. If nothing else, if there's nothing else that you take out of this presentation, the public input piece is the most important, because that's what Oregon local budget law was designed to do, is provide a vehicle for folks to provide that public comment. Quickly, a couple of housekeeping items. So a quorum of the governing body may not meet in private for the purpose of deciding on or deliberating toward a decision in any manner. There are 14 members on this committee. So at 50% plus one, that represents a majority. So 8 of you cannot converse outside of this meeting without then establishing a quorum. A couple of dues for you. Our hope is that you take this book with you today and review the contents of it prior to our budget hearings. We have 2 meetings that we're proposing that we'll cover later to go over each of the departments in this budget, as well as some of the nuances. So we kind of hope that you get a chance to go through that. So when you come to these committee meetings, you know what the departments are going to present. You have questions that maybe you have, or maybe that you've heard from the outside. We want all that brought to the table so that we can get everything answered and everybody feels like they understand what's in each of these pages. There's a lot of pages. I do understand that. This book is about 143 pages, I believe. But I promise you it is all riveting information. It's critical information to this process. So I hope you enjoy the read.
Thank you.
At any point, we want you to request information from staff during this process. Don't be afraid to come and ask us questions, whether it be myself, whether it be Ray as city manager. We are more than happy to help walk you through whatever's in this book or any questions that maybe you think of that aren't addressed in these pages. Our goal and our objective is to be as forthcoming as we can be with the information that we have so that you can make an informed decision at the end of this process. I also urge you to invite public comments and questions. I think I've touched on that enough. Public comment. This is a very wonky page. We borrowed some of this information from the League of Oregon Cities, but this was kind of their map, I guess, for the budget process. So it includes appointing a budget officer. By charter, the budget officer for the city of Sweet Home is the city manager. We have prepared the proposed budget. That's what's in front of you in these binders. And the budget committee meets. It does say there that 5 to 30 days before the meeting, 2 notices are required if published in the newspaper. I think all of you have heard by now that there's a little thing called COVID-19 out there that has drastically changed how we, the city, as well as individuals, are able to interact and participate in their own daily lives. As a result, the governor released an executive order that said, as long as we post in prominent places like our website, and we also did post notices on Facebook and our other social media accounts, then that will suffice for the public notice piece. So we have met that requirement per the governor's executive order to publicize this meeting and to get the word out there that this is happening. At the end of this process, after all 4 of these meetings, you all as a committee will approve maybe the proposed budget and authorize the levy of taxes. From that point, it will then go to the city council to review, have any conversations. There's an open hearing for the city council that is again published in local papers before the council then signs off on the final budget. At that point, it will be what we consider adopted. All of this must be completed before July 1st, because at that point, our ability to spend funds runs out. So there are 3 stages in this budget process. The proposed stage is what we're at right now, where the budget committee reviews. We have presented this proposed budget to you. You all will review, make any changes that you recommend. and approve the budget to be forwarded on to the city council, who will then adopt the budget, again, all before the end of business on June 30th. So as far as the budget committee, what are your official duties? Review the proposed budget document that you have before you. If you've got individuals that are asking questions, feel free to direct them. Our city website, the finance page, will have the city budget on it before tomorrow morning. So they are more than welcome to download this budget and review it. We also have a paper copy in the office available for them. That's a little more difficult, granted that City Hall is closed, so I would recommend the website, but we can also provide copies. There is a fee for providing a paper copy if individuals would like it, but we're happy to produce that for them. Allow the public to ask questions and comment on the budget. I think that's the last time I will talk to you about public comment. Approve the budget with all funds in balance. So we want to make sure that all of our revenues equal our expenditures, and we'll be cooking with fire at that point. And then you'll approve the maximum amount of property taxes to be collected for the year. We'll cover all of that as we go through each of these meetings. That's all I have as far as the role of the budget committee. I do have one video to show you on property taxes, but first I want to pause and allow any questions if anybody has any before we visit the property tax ferry.
No, I have lots of questions, but we can wait.
Okay. Any on the process? We haven't quite gotten to numbers yet.
No.
Okay. I will, let's see.
Nothing's changed since last year.
Yeah.
All right, give me just a second and we'll do this. There's too many buttons on this screen. Okay. All right, here we go then. Let me make
How
sure.
to build a deck?
What's that?
How to build a deck?
No. Okay.
Let's do that one.
Where's, wait for this. All right.
Deschutes County, those of us that live here know it's a special place, and many that visit want to move here. But if you own property in Deschutes County, you also know what crazy times it's been in the last few years regarding property values, which makes for real challenges at the assessor's office. Real market value, assessed value, maximum assessed value. You say tomato, we say tomato, but it comes out confusing all the same. I'm Scott Langton, your county assessor, and I'd like to prepare you for a crazy combination of Measure 50 and a recent real estate market value fluctuations. Please don't shoot the messenger, but some of you might be in for a bit of a surprise when you receive your property tax bill this fall. Now we've come up with a method for you to review your tax situation in a graphic way. To explain this, we've enlisted the aid of the Property Tax Fairy to tell you a story. The story of Measure 50 and the 3 tax laws.
What are you looking at? Have you never seen a property tax fairy before? Well, get comfortable and pay attention because we haven't much time.
Speaking of time, that's what this story is all about. Let's fire up the property tax time machine and go back to 1997. Then, Oregon voters passed Measure 50, which was designed to limit property taxes. Measure 50 created what's called the maximum assessed value, which was the real market value of your property in 1995, less 10%. Here's an example. In 1997, the real market value of this property was $140,000. The maximum assessed value of this house was set at $126,000. Over the next 10 years or so, the real market value of this property steadily increased, but Measure 50 ensured that the maximum assessed value only increased by 3%, on this home. So the owners of this property saw only minor increases in their tax bill, while they enjoyed a major increase in the real market value of the property. Then the real estate bubble burst and the property values began to fall. Because the maximum assessed value was so far below the real market value on this property, the maximum assessed value still increased 3% annually by law. And that's why property taxes still kept going up despite the market value going down. That's pretty straightforward, right? This homeowner enjoyed the benefit of lower taxes despite fluctuating property values. A lot of new construction has occurred in Deschutes County since then. When a house is first built, it receives its initial real market value, and also with that, its maximum assessed value. The assessed value is the lower of these and becomes the baseline for calculating your property taxes. Now here's where it gets a little tricky and becomes a job for the property tax fairy.
Because of the crazy real estate market we've been having the last few years and the ongoing effects of Measure 50, we may see some wildly different changes in the maximum assessed value of some Deschutes County properties, even if the properties are very similar to each other.
We told you about Measure 50. Now let's illustrate the current situation. Here we have a typical subdivision in Bend. It was started in 2006, and the developer built several homes before the market started changing. As the housing market went down, it took several years to complete more homes in the subdivision. This home was completed and therefore assessed for tax purposes in 2006. At that time, the property's real market value was $280,000. Its maximum assessed value was about $120,000. The home right next to it was built in 2009. Its real market value was determined to be $200,000, and its maximum assessed value $166,000. Then in 2012, this third house was finished. Its real market value was $190,000, and its maximum assessed value was $181,000. 3 homes, similar sizes, same location, but 3 different property tax bills. Property 1, built and assessed before the peak of the housing market, has seen a big drop in real market value. Property 2, built and assessed in 2009, has seen a little less of a drop in real market value. Property 3, built as the market bottomed out, has a completely different scenario. 3 properties, similar in size, design, and location, but their tax bills will be very different. Here's where Measure 50 has worked. Property 1, whose value dropped the most, saw only the normal 3% increase in its property taxes as prescribed by Measure 50. Property 2, whose value also dropped pretty significantly, now has a real market value less than their maximum assessed value. Remember, Measure 50 says the assessed value will be the lower of the real market value and the maximum assessed value. Because of that, its assessed value became the same value as the real market value, and Property 2 actually saw a 9% decrease in its property taxes last year. Again, with Property 3, this is its first year of valuation, so there's nothing to compare it to yet.
But here's the kicker. The real estate market appears to be rebounding. And as real market values rise, the assessed value will continue to be the lower of the real market value or the maximum assessed value.
However, if the market increases by more than 3% in 1 year and the assessed value and real market value are the same, the assessed value can increase by any percentage until it reaches the maximum assessed value. Back to our 3 properties again. And you can see Property 1 is the most stable and will see the anticipated 3% increase. Property 3 in its second year will also see a 3% increase, but Property 2 is going to be surprised to see a tax increase of 14%. That's because its assessed value was pegged to its real market value. And with an increase in value of 20%, it may come as a shock, but it's because of Measure 50, the law Oregon voters passed in 1997.
Oh dear, this can still be kind of confusing, can it? Which scenario is your property going to be in? Up, down, sideways? Well, here's where you can find out for sure.
We won't watch that part. And yes, I do realize that this is Deschutes County. However, lots of counties use this property tax fairy video because it does the best job at explaining kind of the trickiness of property tax values and figuring out what your actual property tax bill is going to be. How this translates into what we're putting into this document and what we're going to walk through with you all over the next 4 meetings is it makes it very difficult for us to project those property tax values as well. because we have a lot of variables to play with. We have the assessed value increases. We have compression that occurs on our police and our library levies, which we'll talk about when we get to each of those funds. So as Ray is going to point out, a lot of this is our best educated historical point our finger based on the information that we have. And so that's what this budget is built on. It's based on revenue increases in some places that are based on easily on historical trend. We can see it as we look at the history in the book. But things like property taxes, we have taken kind of a cautious approach, knowing that, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic right now, property values may flatten or begin to decline. And that puts a different strain on some of our city resources. And again, we'll dive into all of that as we go through each of these departments, but we wanted to give you all kind of a brief overview of what this is going to look like, so you have something to walk into these meetings with. So with that, I turn the time back to our chair.
If you don't mind, I have a comment. So how many millions of dollars did Kate Brown take out that she was supposed to give to us back and put it into an emergency fund? And she took half of it, and I think it was over $100 million that they got in taxes that were way more than they anticipated. And they took a bunch of it and did not give it back to us like they were supposed to. So I have a real tough time with property taxes the way they are. And I understand that two buildings can be completely different across town. But that, to me, we voted to do it, and she doesn't seem to care. And she's doing it in a lot of stuff. And so if you go around this community and the whole Lynn County, there are buildings going up everywhere. And so they're not going to be hurting for money again. And that probably hurts us more than, and Deschutes County more than some. But to me, it just bothers me.
And if I can add, the property taxes, none of the property taxes that we collect from housing within Sweet Home city limits goes to the state. That all stays here.
I get that.
The state does get income taxes
Yes.
from folks like all of us sitting around this room, and some other taxes. So things like if you buy a pack of cigarettes, there's a tax associated with that. If you go to a liquor store and buy something off of the shelf from there, then there's a tax associated with that. And those revenues are then shared. We call them state shared revenues. Those are shared with local governments across the state. And that's all been built into this budget too. So the city itself doesn't get a lot of money from the state. It's usually done through pass-throughs. And again, we'll kind of walk through all of that stuff. But the property taxes that we collect, or that the county collects on our behalf in the city of Sweet Home, stay in the city of Sweet Home.
Well, I think that most people it's not me, but a lot of people would like to have the real market value, which is the higher of not the assessed value.
Sure.
And let me tell you something, if you do that, you know what your taxes are going to be? It's going to be out of this world. Anyway, I'm done.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I'm done for right this minute.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Can I ask a question? Being fairly new to Sweet Home, I've only been here about 2 years now. And I came from Florida, so our tax base was a little different than yours. But was the public really aware of what they were getting into? Because the way I was seeing that, house number one was making a killing out of all the other two, and his house looks like was bigger in square foot than all the other ones. So in Florida, when they come up with price or taxes like that, they will go to court. So have the public gone to court and had the tax assessment look it over to make sure that they are actually getting their fair dollar tax that the homeowner is being charged for, or being overcharged and reassessed?
I imagine.
Can't, they can't. It was by ballot measure. And so it's just the way it is. When anything goes to ballot measure like that, the legislature can't change it. They can't change it. It's just the way it is.
You can go before county for an appeal.
Okay.
You
Can appeal.
go for an
can
appeal.
it. Okay.
Was that tax law by the governors, or was it by the public? Somebody set up a
Public, public.
It was public.
Initiative ballot by citizens. group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
There was kind of a tax revolt in the Northwest. Washington went through a very similar scenario about that time. When they did it, though, they anticipated continual growth. We didn't necessarily anticipate the recession. And so the boom in growth led to I would say a reaction, and then the recession hit and nobody had accounted, I think, for that type of a downfall within the economy. And so it's just kind of an unintended consequence of kind of this perfect storm that took place.
And all of the ballot measure, not ballot measure, measure 5 and measure originally 47 and then revised to measure 50 are ingrained in the Oregon Constitution. And so any attempt to change that has to go back to the voters before it can be changed, which is also why the property tax system is what it is. There have been multiple attempts to try to change how property taxes are calculated, to try to make it simpler for all of us to understand, what goes into our property tax calculations. And all of those have been overturned at the ballot box.
then it must be also hard for a person that's selling their house for a realtor to actually get true comps.
It can be. Yeah, certainly plays into that.
I don't think a lot of people in town understand that fact, that the little video. I know people live on different sides of First Street and their tax bills are so different and they get mad at the city because they think you guys are doing it all and it's nothing to do with you guys.
No.
Or us guys, whatever. But that video being posted somewhere so people can kind of understand would be really good.
And everything that we run through with you all, the PowerPoint for the training and this video, we're going to put along with the budget document up on the finance pages so that folks can have all this information. Because again, we want to be as clear and as transparent as possible with this process. And so everything that you all hear, we want the public to hear as well, because they're just as much invested in this process as the 14 of you.
Ray, could one of you explain why we got shafted when they did that thing and we went to beg for money to get us, and that's Deschutes County is one of them too, and the city of Sweet Home is one of those that got goofed up when they did that, whatever that was, and you might not know what that is because I don't really understand all that stuff either, but we went and begged the state.
Right, you're talking about compression.
What's that?
You're talking about the compression.
Yeah, and we,
Tax rate.
yeah, and we got goofed up on that and they wouldn't change it. There's only two of us, two places, I think.
Our permanent tax rate in the city of Sweet Home is $1.45 per $1,000 assessed value. That is extremely low. And I didn't bring with me what some of our kind of local area folks are. I think Albany is in the $5 to $6 per thousand range. Lebanon is also somewhere in that mid 5 to 10 range. What happened is when measure 47 was passed, the city of Sweet Home at the time had local option levies, like we still currently do. They had option levies for the police and the library. The law at that time said whatever the property tax value is at the time is what becomes your new permanent tax rate. It cannot be adjusted. Well, the legislature and the Department of Revenue and the decision makers decided that because our levies were expiring right as that measure was going through, they would not be included in our permanent tax calculation. And so and I honestly couldn't tell you what the rate was at the time for those levies. But instead of something between $5 and $10 per thousand, the city of Sweet Home got stuck with $1.45. Now, for comparison's sake, $1.45 per thousand generates about $650,000 a year. That's not much when you consider what we need to operate a city of this size. For comparison's sake, the police department and its levy generates north of $2 million a year. And we can only generate 650,000 on our permanent rate. And so it's required the city to continue to pursue other revenue options, including the local option levies that it has kept on the books since the early 1990s. And every 5 years, those levies come up for renewal. And in fact, this year is a levy renewal year. That the city has to then decide, does it go out to ask citizens to renew those levies? It creates a revenue picture that is not, it doesn't provide you a stable footing. It kind of keeps you going for 5 years, and you hope and you hope a lot that you find you can either diversify your revenues or that you're going to continue with a local option levy. And it really just, you're subject to kind of what the thoughts and the beliefs and the current political landscape is like when you make those decisions. So there's a lot to which Sweet Home has to be thankful, and we'll kind of cover some of that stuff in this budget document as we go through. But for example, a lot of cities are dealing with PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System. Thankfully, that based on a decision that was made a decade or so ago, the city of Sweet Home doesn't have to worry about PERS. We do have PERS for our sworn police officers as required by state statute. But the rest of the city employees are not on PERS, and that has saved us from a significant cost increase where cities are seeing 30 some odd % increases in their PERS costs alone each year. Cities, school districts, anybody with public employees, and it hurts. So the city of Sweet Home certainly has that to be thankful for, that we don't have to contend with that. But certainly we then have to review, what are our revenue options? How can we diversify our revenues? How can we make sure that we're doing everything we can and making sure that we're not pricing folks out of Sweet Home? Because that's certainly not the goal either. So it is a tightrope that all of us walk, and we put together a proposed budget for you, but really that's a tightrope that you all walk because you, as the budget committee, are representing this community and deciding, is the budget before you the best budget that will do the most good for the most people for the longest period of time? And that's kind of what this is all about.
Okay, so I didn't mean to open this can of worms.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did.
I said kind of don't.
Basically, we're talking about the taxes, the property taxes that we collect are actually a drop in the bucket compared to the real budget that we have. You just said that we get $650,000.
We get $650,000 on the general fund. We get 2 million and change on the police department side. And we get about 450,000 for the library. So all told, the city generates a little bit more than $3 million in property tax revenue a year to furnish those three funds. Our total budgeted revenues, new revenues, is $20.3 million. So the other nearly $17 million in revenue that we generate comes from different sources.
Right.
Some of it comes from the state, some of it comes from user fees for water and sewer and storm. And some comes from permit fees, and there's a whole host of other revenue generating things that are in this budget.
So our property taxes are actually fairly low in the total poll compared to for our revenue.
Yeah.
The other thing about this property tax is it also based on the last time your property was assessed.
Correct.
And that makes the biggest difference.
Right.
My property taxes have gone up $1,000 in 2 years. That's a big jump. That's not 3%. So.
Well, it depends on
It's
if,
your last assessment. So if I hadn't been assessed for the past 25 years, all of a sudden it changes.
yeah, and if homes came off of compression, then you'll really go up.
Right, well.
Doesn't matter if you mow your lawn or not.
My neighbor across the street, she went down in your taxes.
Yeah.
The people down the street and across the street, all of us went up. So.
And compression's a big deal. So Measure 5 said that the cities and counties cannot collect more than $10 per thousand real market value. And so what happens is you take our 2 levies and our permanent rate, and you mix that with the county taxes, the county tax rates, the Sweet Home Cemetery District has a tax rate, the Sweet Home Fire and Ambulance District. I think that's it. You mix all that together and.
4-H too, I believe.
Oh, right, a 4-H also. So overall, our property tax rate, take this with a grain of salt, our property tax rate initially is $14 and I want to say 16 cents per $1,000 of real market value. We can't do that. And so what happens is something called compression. And to do that, they take our local option levies first. Anything that's voted on by residents every 5 years, they take that and compress the value until you get within that $10 per thousand range. The city of Sweet Home has seen compression rates where the police department and the library have lost upwards of 35% of the revenue that they could be getting from property taxes each year because of compression. Our compression rate for this current fiscal year is 19%. It's certainly better. It has certainly helped us in completing projects and much needed equipment upgrades. But that compression will come back again. Luckily, it has not hit our permanent rate. The time that it does hit our permanent rate is the time that the global economy probably has a very different picture than it does today, and probably not one we ever want to think about. But property taxes, there's a lot of stuff that goes into property taxes and the assumption of what the city of Sweet Home is going to be able to get in as far as value.
Clear as mud. Can't wait for my neighbor to ask me.
It's a fun game. Every
Oh, yeah, I can dance with
October,
that
get
stuff.
out there and
It's not a problem.
I'm trying to find the permanent tax rates.
Are we ready to move forward?
I think.
yes, Ken, I think we are.
Okay, what do we have next on our agenda?
Budget message.
Budget message.
Thank you, Brandon.
Are we ready?
Yep.
City Council, I should say this is on page 1 of your binder as well. Behind the first tab, if you want to follow along. And I will apologize, I found a couple of typos as we was looking through this just before the meeting started. City Council, Budget Committee members and citizens of Sweet Home. Enclosed is the proposed 2020-21 budget for your review. This budget makes relatively positive assumptions and is opportunistic for the next year, with the clear understanding that the need to be responsive to changes in revenues going forward. Municipal budgeting is part science, part art, and part use of a crystal ball. The last 3 years have seen us successfully forecast general fund revenues within 1%. Normal practice was to look for and identify local, state, and national trends, try to understand the impact that any new legislation may have upon our community, and utilize state budget forecasts to derive our revenue figures. Normal, however, went out the window with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. There is no trend to apply in this situation, And while there are ever-changing state projections we refer to, a crystal ball may prove to be the best tool we have for this budget. There is no blueprint or template to follow for our current situation. The fiscal year 2019-20 budget assumed $23,875,422 of revenue. The 2020-21 assumes $34,664,941 of revenue, an additional $10,789,519, primarily due to grants allowing continuation of the wastewater treatment plant and Sankey Park projects, and a reclassification of internal service charges. Most of our revenues are from utility fees and property taxes. Changes in property taxes are delayed by at least a year for assessed valuations to catch up with changes in the real estate market. So we are cautiously optimistic for fiscal year 2020-21. That said, this budget assumes a decrease in state pass-through revenues, such as the gas tax and payroll tax, both used to fund street division. It also assumes a significant drop in the transient occupancy tax, a rise in uncollected property tax, and no change in compression, all equating to less revenue than we would have forecasted only a few weeks ago. Compression fell to 19% for fiscal year 2019-20, much better than the 30% to 35% we experienced during the recession. This fiscal year 2020-21 budget assumes compression stays flat instead of continuing to decrease as it has for the past 3 years. We do anticipate the following year, fiscal year 2021-22, will see an increase in compression with a correlating decrease to property values and property tax collections. We preserve many capital projects in this budget. However, we are aware of the looming uncertainty and have forecasts for it. We present this budget knowing full well some of it may not come to fruition as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic's effect on the economy. However, should we have the funding in the budget, the decreased cost for materials should present an opportunity to realize savings in projects and help stimulate the local economy at the same time. Oregon purchasing laws will require authorization for the City Council to advertise for a bid, accept the bid, and approve a contract. The council will need to vote on any effort to move a project forward. Yet having the project in the budget allows the city to be agile and take advantage of lower market prices without missing potential windows of opportunity by having to convene special public hearings for additional budget appropriations. That said, our sound financial practices and work in Salem allow us to assume a reasonably good financial outlook for the immediate future and ability to adjust expectations in following years as needed. Utilizing our updated forecasting formulas, this budget preserves at least 5 to 6 months of operating expenses for beginning fund balances in all funds out to 2024, except enterprise funds, which remain at 2 months. We enacted a spending freeze in March with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. As such, you will see a large carryover from this year to next year. Street improvement projects were put on hold this year in an abundance of caution. The wastewater treatment plant and Sankey Park project continue on schedule because they are largely funded from outside grants. There are about $9.5 million of outside funding secured so far for these projects, and we will continue to seek additional external funding for them. Failure to continue these projects would jeopardize those grants. These grant funds account for the increased spending in this budget. City Council narrowly approved a slight increase for water rates in fiscal year 2020-21. However, most consumers are still paying less than they did 2 years ago for their water. These rates allow for some much needed capital items in the water delivery system, namely a backwash system upgrade, variable frequency drive, 9th Avenue 2-inch galvanized pipe and service replacement, as well as replacement of water meters that are 2 to 3 times past their lifespan and erroneously reporting water usage. Should the economy not rebound, we fully expect council may cut back on the projects and lower the rate. The community approved an increase in the public safety levy in 2015. That increase and a recovering economy allowed sorely needed improvements to radio equipment, safety equipment, staffing, training, and the fleet vehicles within the police department. City Council stated they would not collect the entire public safety levy of $7.85 per 1,000 assessed value if it was not needed. This budget follows through on that council promise, asking to collect 30 cents less per thousand, down to $7.55 per thousand of assessed valuation. This is a savings of about $230,000 to the community. This lower collection rate and estimated loss of revenues equates to about $400,000 less revenue in the public safety levy than last year. As a result, the police department is not filling two full-time equivalent employees. However, the amount for one FTE is in the police contingency fund, allowing council to approve filling a position if conditions allow later in the year and returning FTE to 2019 levels. We project the library budget to remain relatively flat for the upcoming year because its revenues are almost strictly related to property taxes. Again, any decrease in property tax values as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic won't be reflected in property tax collections for at least a year. This budget is designed to allow the community to continue moving forward and take advantage of falling market prices for goods and services, while allowing the city council to maintain control over expenditures and adjust as needed. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your opportunity to serve you. Howard?
Thank you, Ray. What do we have next?
Review of dates.
Correct. If I could interject for just a moment, we had a budget done over a month ago. It was done, it was balanced, it was ready to go. We've had to create a whole new budget in about the last 7 days. The COVID-19 pandemic has thrown everything into a little bit of an unknown, unforeseen, and has thrown any kind of schedules kind of out the window. As a result of that, we had intended on starting this process earlier. We didn't because we wanted to wait for some state forecasts to come in before we started to reformulate a new budget. And so that being said, quite honestly, the dates that we're setting here that we've proposed, there's not a lot of wiggle room for us to do this. And given the challenges that we face, and still trying to meet the spirit and the intent of Oregon budget law, trying to allow for public input, questions, commentary, to be as transparent as we can possibly be through this process. We've proposed dates in which we try to give people time to ask questions, to review the budget on their own, turn questions into us electronically or by phone, and then come back again to you to answer those questions and any questions that you all may have as well. So the schedule we've proposed is pretty tight. Certainly there is a little bit of wiggle room here and there on these dates that may need, but everything probably, quite honestly, really needs to occur within the week that it's scheduled to give everybody that time to process and understand. And again, with the challenges we face, to allow them that input to then make that recommendation to the council, for then the council to hold public hearings and the council to pass it by the June 31st deadline. Excuse me, June 30th deadline. So we've proposed some dates for you, trying to keep all of that in mind. Certainly open to a little wiggle here and there if there are dates that just don't work for people. But we really probably would ask that we maintain those meetings at least within the same week that we've proposed them.
Is there any, looking at the dates of May 5th, May 14th, and May 19th, I don't know if you see this, Ken, is there any conflict with anybody here? I mean, is there like a majority of you that say these dates are not going to work?
Good for me.
Good for me.
None of us have a life right now, so right? We're not going anywhere, so.
Yeah.
Those that are on video, do you have any conflict of dates?
Nope, I don't.
Counselor Goble, Cashel Nash.
I'm good. So am I.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Well, that said, we will maintain the dates as stated. I do remind council, my fellow council members and the budget members, I encourage you, as the city manager mentioned, any questions, and go through this budget book very thoroughly and study it and do your due diligence to take care of this. And let's try to follow the timelines as stated and get her done.
You're done.
I was causing trouble.
So, that being said, I just have two questions. And you probably don't have any answers to this, but, so you said there's gonna be a carryover from being closed for 2 months. I'm figuring March 5th, May 5th, March 5th, May 5th, 2 months
Well, we have frozen all non-essential spending
since March 5th.
since March 5th.
So how much money do you think is gonna be carried over? Because that'll help.
When we get to those sections, we'll explain what those carryovers are. But yeah, at this point, we're still projecting,
Okay.
but when we get to each section, we'll point out what those are for each of the funds.
And the other question would be, how much of a loss do you think that how much loss we've had from those two?
Our last,
Any kind of guess? I know it's hard to.
yeah, so I think our last numbers were 6. The last numbers we ran earlier this week, was it? Monday. We had realized about a 6% loss in overall revenues so far than what we had projected or would be if you took the budget, divided it by 12, and then said, here's where we are this month. So roughly a 6% loss at this point.
On a budget of 34 million?
The total,
That was on last year's budget.
yeah, the revenue
Yeah,
is budgeted at 23,875,000.
Yeah, but part of the 34 is also guaranteed money with the grants, and you can't include the grants and some of the stuff, the Sankey money, that's guaranteed. You're talking about the actual budget.
That being said, today we had a very generous donation. Somebody came in and donated over $4,900 to pay anybody who had past due water bill from the month of March. So that doesn't account for that. That donation came from Life Point Church today. Very, very kind of them. So that doesn't account for that dollar amount and that 6%.
That's amazing.
Carpenter's non-essential, or are they still building here in town?
Still building.
So as long as they were in the process of building, they can't start anything new, but they can go on with, or can they do new? They can even do new?
Construction was deemed essential, I believe.
Yeah.
Washington's a different story.
Yeah, no, some states was you could build as long as it was an ongoing thing, you couldn't build any new.
Right.
Yeah. So
And even though,
This will continue based,
a lot of things.
this is gonna continue based on how long we're shut down too. And based on the information that we've got as of last night, this could go on for a little while longer. Our county commissioners are working feverishly to try to get our county open back up again. We need to get it open. So it just depends on how long we shut down with how much continued losses we're gonna see or face.
So your shutdown, did you defer some payments? So basically, those are not like counted into your budget? Like for late fees or for people that, were out of work, I don't know, Sweet Home.
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Yes, so we didn't defer any city payments. City still made all of its payments. But we did not shut anybody off for non-payment at the last billing cycle. We also waived any late fees in the last billing cycle because of people's loss of jobs. Interest fees as well were also waived on account of the COVID-19 issues. Yeah.
And the businesses that needed to turn off their water while they're closed. We waived those as well.
Yeah, we waived that turn-off fee for them as well. Yeah.
Is there any other discussion?
I'd like to know what where we're starting. Like, is it gonna be the library or is it gonna be the public works? Because it would make it easier for me, I'm pretty slow, obviously, to know, so I could research that more for the next meeting than I would the whole budget.
So the May 5th meeting we're slated to review the internal service fund, the police department, and the library. Do we have one more on there, Julie? Is it Ked?
I'd have to look at the notice, but I think
I think Ked's on there too.
Yeah.
Sorry, my pen wouldn't work. Internal services?
Internal services, police department,
Library and Ked.
library, and Ked. Ked is community and economic development, sorry. The May 14th meeting, we will cover finance, executive and legislative, and public works. We proposed the May 19th meeting. We're not specifically planned to cover any departments in that meeting, but we wanted to provide enough time for the community to provide the feedback that would give you an ability to make an informed decision. So we'll do the presentations on the 14th, and that will give the community 5 days to call in, to email, to write, basically make their voices heard, and then reconvene on the 19th to approve or make any changes and then approve the budget.
So you said internal fund, the PD, library, and what else?
Community and economic development.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Okay, any other discussion? Anything for good of the order? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, let's get out of here. Oh, did I say
All
that?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have to have a roll call for that?
As a consensus.
We need to roll call that at all.
I was just.
So adjournments don't usually require a vote.
But this-
Can just adjourn a meeting.
Okay, this is a unique situation, that's why I asked. We're adjourned. Thanks, Kenny.
Thanks.
Thanks for everybody coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody have a good evening.
You also.